Hi, and welcome to VIP Ask the Candidates, a set of short videos where we ask the four main party candidates up for election to be Bristol's next mayor the questions that are important to the communities we work with. In this video, we ask what they would do for Bristol's Black and minority ethnic communities and get answers and hear their views on topics including how can trust be built so communities are better supported, what can be done to help people to find work, and how will they ensure they can work with and treat all of Bristol's citizens as equals. Coming up, you will hear from the Conservative Party candidate, Alistair Watson, Green Party candidate, Sandy Horuven, Labour Party candidate, Marvin Rees, Liberal Democrat candidate, Caroline Gooch. Each candidate was interviewed separately, so their answers are a direct response to the questions, and they didn't get to hear what each other said in advance. We haven't edited their responses, so you can hear what they had to say in full. The Voice and Influence Partnership was set up to help make sure that individuals, groups and communities whose voices aren't always heard or listened to are part of shaping Bristol's future. The Care Forum, who I work for, leads the project and also delivers its work supporting Bristol's Black and minority ethnic communities. The partnership also includes the Emma Down Centre, who lead our multi-faith work, Wessel, who are our lead for disability, OTR, who lead our LGBTQ+ work, and Bristol Older People's Forum, who lead our work for older people. We also have our advisory partners, Centre for Deaf and Hard of Hearing People, SARI, Stand Against Racism and Inequality, and VOSCA. The Voice and Influence Partnership's work is funded through Bristol City Council's Bristol Impact Fund, but we are fully independent of the council. And now on to the important part, hearing from the candidates. If you're elected to be Mayor of Bristol, what will you do for Bristol's Black and minority ethnic communities?
I'm not a fan of the phrase, what will you do for? It's got to be do it with. And there are two important reasons for that. I think one is if you do things for people, you can end up creating a relationship of power and powerlessness and dependency. It's very easily done. It's kind of colonial approach to development. So that's very important that actually part of what we do is work with people to become leaders. It's not just down to one person. Secondly, in much more broadly, politics, we have to get beyond this transactional relationship. I do something for you, and with that, I purchase your vote. It's about coming to a shared understanding of the world and then agreeing priorities and working together on those. But having said that, to me, again, across all equalities communities, it's about identifying people and supporting them into leadership so that by their very nature, they're shaping the institutions that govern our lives and shape our lives. There are specific things that we do want to do. There's emphasis we want to bring. Inequalities in the educational journey, inequalities and discrimination in housing, inequalities and discrimination in mental health and employment. Bristol's supposed to be the 7th worst city for race inequality in the country, which is shameful, particularly when you contrast that with the progressive brand we have. But I think those are some of the real gatekeeper issues that we have.
If I'm elected as mayor, I will certainly want to connect with all communities, and the BME and BAME and communities that are important in Bristol. We have an amazingly diverse set of communities in our city. It is made Bristol what it is today, having those different cultural influences. So very supportive of that, and of particularly of the charity sector that are helping to integrate, to help to bring forward the issues that and particularly we've got to stamp out racism in any form. Certainly, if there's any institutions that we feel are racist in any way, then we will need to look at that. So I'm very supportive of what happens in those communities. I do want to get them involved. The more they're involved in politics, the better.
Well, thanks for the question. And I do know that the historical wrongs that have been done in the past, enslavement and colonialism and a number of other historical issues, still affect on a day-to-day basis many members of the Black and Asian community. And that's something that we first must highlight and then aim to repair over the coming years. And the Green Party was one of the lead parties that put forward the reparations motion that went to full council a few months ago. And that's something I'm really proud of. And so key sort of things would be, first of all, that kind of recognition of the need to acknowledge our history, to teach the broad history of our very diverse city, both in schools, but in the wider community too. And then also, of course, to represent. And I would say one of the things that has happened well under the current administration is that there has been an increased diversity in the leadership of our city. And that's something that I would look to continue. However, I think there's a key next step that hasn't happened yet, and that is real investment and real sort of physical change, if you like, for those communities. And I think there's a number of things, practical things we can do. So I've committed to building 2,000 new council homes as a way of making sure everybody, particularly vulnerable communities, including the Black and Asian minority communities, have a place to call home. And that's a really key pledge that I'm making to put a proper number of those in to those communities and offering them to the Black and Asian community. Then second of all, making sure that we are funding community organisations properly with good core funding to make sure that those organisations have the chance to thrive and really serve their communities and grow and scale up their impact. I want to push for employers to represent the communities that they're serving and the communities that they're in. And that's something I've aimed to do within my own organisation. I'm the chief executive of the Creative Youth Network, and it's something we haven't got as far as we need to yet, but it is something we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. And then the final thing is really sort of supporting those programs like Stepping Up, but kind of mentoring and support for Black and Asian minority ethnic individuals who are stepping up into those positions, whether it's on the boards or of companies or into senior management positions, or even into a new job where diversity isn't great. I do understand the need for those groups to be able to support each other, get that peer support, so that they feel they can really do their best in a new working environment.
So the Liberal Democrats have in their statement of principles and the preamble to the Constitution that we exist to seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, and no one shall be enslaved by poverty, ignorance and conformity, or held back by race and heritage, religion, gender, disability or sexual orientation. So I would seek to live that and just seek for equanimity for all. And I think one of the biggest challenges is for us to understand what are the issues of each community, because we all have our own lived experience and we need to talk to others to understand what their lived experience is, and find out what we can do to improve things for that community. So it's very much, I think, a listening thing. I wouldn't be seeking to tell you what I'm going to do for you. I want you to tell me, what do you want me to do for you?
People from BME communities often choose not to take up their right to escalate or report incidences such as street harassment because of a lack of confidence in the system, language barriers, or not trusting the police. This results in a low percentage of the BME community reporting incidents. How will you address these issues and help facilitate a more effective system?
I certainly would encourage everybody to report anything that they feel is illegal, and hate speech and all the rest of it, but harassment and so forth. I do hope that people will. I think we've got to address it through the law enforcement bodies that we have, particularly the police, and I think the Police and Crime Commissioner has done a lot of work. Sue Mount-Stevens, I know she's stepping down, but we'll have another Police and Crime Commissioner. I think it's important that they address these matters. I will work with the Police and Crime Commissioner. We want them reported. We want to know what's going on there. We want to try and stamp it out where possible and to prosecute if necessary.
I think we need to have a public conversation about street harassment, to be honest, because obviously as I say, I'm not BME, and so I haven't experienced what BME people experience in the street. I've occasionally come across it, and when I've seen it, it's ugly. And I think other people need to feel empowered to step up and step in when they see it. And certainly when I have seen it, I once saw a black security guard being abused by someone in a supermarket. And actually a crowd of women formed around the security guard and all started heckling the man who was doing the abusing. So okay, you know, things like that, where it's loud, people will intervene. But I know I have an Asian friend who, after Brexit, she didn't feel safe to go on buses, and it's the insidious, I think, the small things, isn't it? And the ongoing, and as a woman, you know, you don't report the harassment that you get in the street ever, because it happens every day. So yeah, I think we need to have a conversation, and people do need to speak out. So and I think social media is a great enabler of speaking out. So I think we need to get these stories shared, and we need to get them out there, and we need to get, like the Me Too movement, we need to get BME people to share what their experiences of the system are, because people like me actually have no idea what BME, the communities are facing on a daily basis, because we haven't experienced it. And I would say occasionally we come up against it and we're shocked, but in a day-to-day basis, we often don't see it.
The key to good policing is the principle of policing by consent, and that means the police need to spend the time to understand the communities that they're serving, to build trust with them, and for the communities then in turn to trust that the police are there to help. Now, that's something that takes time. It's really key that justice is served in cases. So police need to give priority to those incidents in order to make sure that communities can begin to trust that the police are on their side. I think the council's role in that is to, in some places, act as a sort of broker. So community development officers, you know, politicians, to work alongside the police. You know, this is the importance of having a diverse, say, councillor group or diverse officers within the council, to make sure that those community links are there. And actually, I would highlight that our Police and Crime Commissioner candidate is Cleo Lake, who is somebody who's been you know, active and an activist in the Black community for a long time, and would be uniquely placed to help build those bridges between communities and the police and the system itself. And ultimately, that's what we want, is policing and justice by consent, where both communities understand what the police want and the police are there to do, and the police understand and will listen to the communities that they serve.
We faced a very similar situation when I was in the health service in the past, actually. The people not always getting the same standard of service and not reporting those issues. And what we did, or I want to give all the credit to Mohammed Al Sharif here, was set up third-party reporting centres with community-based organisations that people did trust. And those community organisations can report into the systems. And that's what we need to do with organisations like SARI. We now have a commission on race equality. We have a Bristol Legacy Commission. We've just had the LAMI review led by Des Brown. All of these places people can go to feed into our public systems. So we'll set those up. But there's two other things I would say. One is that really presses into the importance of people from a wider range of communities taking up positions in these formal institutions. Be they becoming magistrates on the boards of health organisations, or even getting elected, because then we will have confidence. And we need to be perfectly frank. We need to step up into that. And so part of it is our responsibility as well. We can't allow a history of being ignored to lead us to a position where we self-censor. So it is a challenge. We've got to do our bit, but it's also a challenge to us as a community as to how we move.
How can you help our highly skilled and educated immigrant and BME communities find work and build connections with other communities across Bristol?
Clearly, this is a huge issue. There's so much skill and talent within our BME communities that is wasted when it's not used properly in all aspects, all parts of business, administration, academia, and so it is such a waste. So it's something that we must do something about. So the key is to have first, English language courses and access to English language and translation. That's the first kind of a key thing. But then I think it's about that. I spoke earlier about representation, and that means supporting those members of the immigrant communities to step up into anything from speaking at events, coming along to networking events, having their own groups, peer groups who can then support them to take steps into into the world of business or academia or whatever it is. I think the other side of that coin is to make sure that organizations and businesses are open and understand their biases, understand the barriers that immigrant communities might face. So that's training around unconscious bias. It's making sure that companies measure the diversity of their staff and have actually clear action plans to reach out into those communities and invite those people in, because we know that diverse workforces with expertise from all sorts of backgrounds makes for better business, better decisions.
This is a specific piece of work we have been doing. I've been very blessed over the last few years to have both Ford Masikwadzo and David Barclay with genuine expertise on refugees, asylum seekers, and how we build a welcoming city working in my office. And one of the things that when we think about work, one of the things we've been pressing government for is to give people the space to be able to work and not be excluded from the opportunities to work. Outside of that, because obviously that's going to take some time, we've been looking for volunteering opportunities for people as well, to be able to be active, to be engaged, and creating. And I've been very clear as well in my approach to the city that this is an international city, and I obviously have some aspects of my character, being the son of migrants myself, to continue to state that the overall culture, no matter what happens to you, when there will be hostility sometimes, is that this is a city that welcomes people. But again, when we think back to the importance of our voluntary community sector, building integrated housing, by that meaning mixed tenure housing developments as well. I was in Alderman's Moor just recently. It was a family. It was a Syrian family that had a house over there, in a beautiful house and ground source heat as part of a new community. So we're trying to build it into the actual physical development of Bristol.
It would be really, really useful if we could have a sort of, introduction to Bristol hub or something, where people who are new to the city, and especially immigrants, can actually go to get, plugged into the system, as it were, because we also need to make sure we work against inequalities in the system for how people get jobs, and I expect that it might differ across different areas. So I'd need to understand what barriers people are coming up against, I think, to understand how we could remove the barriers. But maybe some networks could be quite useful to actually start, so that we've got people in the local NHS and all the other areas where the skilled migrants might want to be working, who can actually say, the best way to get into this area is this, or and where we actually have a hub of where we need people as well, because obviously there are openings all over the place. And so we definitely want to start up sort of tech hubs as well. So I think there's an opportunity there for people to be supported in setting up their own businesses as well. And also in the creative industries, we want to support those as well. So I think that's the thing, because there's a wide range of skilled jobs that people can do. So it depends what it is that people want to do as to how we would put that help in place. I think the other thing is whether or not we've got recognition of their qualifications as well in this country. So it might be something that we actually need to go to the governing bodies for that profession and say, can we please recognise this person's qualification? Because they're kind of reciprocal automatically for some countries, I think, but certainly not for everywhere. And so, yeah, that would be the kind of thing that we might be able to get some assistance with as well.
I think some of them are finding good quality work in Bristol. I certainly would encourage the skills, to improve the skills, improve language ability and so on. We need to support that where we can. One of the things I'm keen on is to make sure that commercial organisations do not discriminate against these sorts of applicants. And, one hears that can happen just by the nature of the name that's put forward. I'm quite a fan. I know it's people say, oh, it's all about woke and everything, but I'm quite a fan of unconscious bias training within organizations. I think we all have bias. We can't help it. We need to train that out of ourselves. So I would certainly be putting that forward, because even if people don't think they're being discriminatory, sometimes they can be unconsciously that. So but there's lots of areas we can work on there, and I'd certainly support the charities that are working on that, and hopefully they'll be working with business to make sure this doesn't happen so much.
Bristol's communities are made up of many different faiths, cultures and beliefs. What will you do to ensure you can work with them as a single city of equal citizens?
I love the diversity of our city. I was lucky enough to grow up in a household where people from all over the world would, and all sorts of different backgrounds would sort of come and go almost on a daily basis. And I've always had that passion for people to hear their stories and to listen to, what they have to say and their views on the world. And that's a sort of experience I would take. So the first and most important thing is to reach out into all the communities. That's what I've tried to do in my day job at Creative Youth Network with young people. We've reached out into, I'd say almost all of the communities in the city and listen, to what their priorities are. I believe that nobody really has a monopoly on good ideas. And actually, the more views you hear, the better decisions you make. And often there are views from different cultures, different faiths, which really help us to make better decisions. So that's the first thing. And yes, that reaching out, but then working with people, and by bringing them together. Actually, you can build those bridges and help people to understand each other from different communities and respect each other's beliefs and cultures and ways of looking at the world, and therefore including them in the decision making in whatever aspect that is. That might be a planning decision, and what happens to a sort of high street, or where houses should be built, or even sort of big things like how we tackle climate change. And one of the things I've pledged is to have a rainbow cabinet, so a cross-party cabinet, which will make sure that there are views from across the city, from different parties and different backgrounds and different cultures, but also to have citizens' assemblies. So on the really big issues that might be big developments, or like I say, repeat myself, saying things like tackling climate change, we want to make sure that the input on those citizens' assemblies reflects the city that we live in. So we would absolutely make sure that different cultures, different races, different beliefs, different backgrounds are all represented on those really big decisions that we need to make as a city.
I'm very inclusive as a person, and I think that we must include the voices from everybody within our city. I'm probably not as keen on the way that the current mayor has organised this. I would look more to having sort of consultative meetings and bringing people in, talking on particular specific areas. I think the thing that I'm most interested in is to do practical things. So, you know, a lot of forums talking about, you know, there's just so many issues out there. Let's get some practical things and get them done, and find out what the top priorities are for all these communities. So, you know, I would certainly carry on with consultation as we go forward, and do that in a rigorous way.
I love how diverse Bristol is. I'd love it to be more diverse. After spending a lot of time living in London, I actually don't think Bristol is anywhere near as diverse as it could be. And we are a city of sanctuary, and we want to continue to be. And I think we want to welcome diversity, because we welcome the vibrancy it actually brings to the city. And Bristol's always been a diverse culture. So I think it's just a case of embracing the different cultures, different faiths and beliefs, and just encouraging every community to feel that they 100% are part of the city. And also, I think, find ways for other cultures to experience each other. So it would be great if we could do carnivals where all cultures kind of came and became part of it and celebrated their own culture. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what ideas people would come up with for this, if we maybe had a citizens' assembly on it or something. As how can we celebrate our differences at the same time as being one? I think it's a case of realizing that the whole is made up of a myriad of different parts, and we're stronger because of the differences, because we can celebrate how much there is to offer.
I think in terms of attitude and approach, the approach I've taken to City Lead to what it means to run a city is to create a space in which we can live with difference, right? And not be afraid of difference, actually, but live with it, because it's what we are. I blow this up from my own experience. I'm the son of on one side Welsh, white Welsh, English heritage, and my Welsh family go back to Ireland. On my father's side, came here as a 12-year-old Jamaican. I don't pretend that my mum is black or my dad is white or my Welsh or English. I'm all of those things at the same time, and I live with my difference. And I think that's part of a city. You don't have to pretend to have a uniform identity. We are different, right? And the skill is living with that difference. Having said that, what's some of the practical ways you live with difference? That's one of the reasons we focus on tackling inequality, exclusion, and social exclusion. Those drivers, be they through economics, criminal justice, that actually can create situations in which people are much more afraid of difference, because they feel like they're losing their city, for example, when people look different or pray differently to them as well. So one is about attitude, and what is our identity? What does it mean to be us? What is our culture? It creates a bit of a framework, but making sure that we have the right socioeconomic context in which it's easier to live with difference, so we can allay people's fears. I might say too, just but another feature of that is actually looking at the challenge of climate change. So when we think about policy, this is where actually making sure we decarbonize our economic growth is really important to this, because we're looking at the prospect of 200 million climate-driven migrants by the middle of this century. I sit on the Mayor's Migration Council with about 10 other mayors from around the world. So again, the circumstances in which it's easier for people to live with difference, we've got to, the impact we have on the planet, the likelihood that drives people to have to leave their countries of origin will have implications for our societies here as well. So it's a really rounded approach. But first off, I think we just got to craft what is a Bristol identity. A Bristol identity is we are a place of difference.
Thank you to our VIP citizen members and the communities we work with for your involvement and questions, and to the candidates for taking part.